All right, let's get into it. Today we are tracking one of the biggest stories shaping the country right now. This massive wave of migration that is literally redrawing the map of America. We're talking about the Sunbelt boom, this incredible phenomenon that's seen millions of people pack up and head south, all looking for sun, space, and a better shot at life.
So it's the big question, right? Where is everybody heading these days? And it's more than just idle curiosity. Where people choose to live tells us so much about our economy, about our changing lifestyles, and really about the future of our cities. So, where's all the momentum going? Well, the data is giving us some very clear answers.
Okay, let's dive straight into the numbers. U-Haul's latest growth index gives us our first major clue. And as you can see, it is a very familiar story at the top. Texas and Florida are once again the top destinations, just pulling in a huge number of those one-way moves. You can think of them as the twin engines driving this whole great American shuffle.
Here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the big picture, then look at why the Sunbelt is so popular and the price of that popularity. Then we'll see how states like Texas and Florida are trying to manage the chaos. And finally, what this new reality in the Sunbelt really means for everyone.
So let's start with Section 1 and see how the bigger picture is shifting. Because the reasons people are packing their bags now are actually a little different than they were just a couple of years ago.
We're seeing this fascinating reversal happening. You remember how the pandemic sparked that huge rush away from dense cities? Well, now, the magnetic pull of city life is back. People are actually returning to major metro areas, looking for jobs, culture, and that connection once again.
Which brings us right to the heart of this story, the Sunbelt boom. Because even with cities making a comeback, this whole southern tier of the country is still exerting this incredible force, pulling in new residents from all over the nation.
And at the very top of the list for the third year in a row is Texas. I mean, this isn't just a blip anymore. This is a sustained migration pattern that is fundamentally reshaping the Lone Star State.
And right on its heels, at number 2, is Florida. It's been a top 3 destination for 5 straight years now. It's really created this powerful center of gravity for American migration, right alongside Texas.
Now, look at this, because what's really interesting here is the sheer regional dominance. Just look at that list. The top 5 are all southern states. In fact, get this, 8 of the top 10 growth states are in the South. The region has become an absolute powerhouse of population growth.
But here's where the story gets complicated. This tidal wave of new residents, it doesn't come without consequences. The incredible popularity of these states is creating some serious and often really unexpected challenges.
This slide just captures the core conflict perfectly. People move south for the promise of a more affordable, better life, but the reality they're finding is one of soaring housing costs, strained infrastructure, and, in places like Florida, a full-blown insurance crisis.
So the crucial point is that this boom is starting to cool off. Analysts are pointing out that the very affordability that drew people in the first place is now disappearing, and that's causing the pace of migration to slow down. The gold rush, you could say, is meeting the laws of supply and demand.
And here are the specific things putting the brakes on. Home prices and mortgage rates have made buying a house a huge challenge, even in these places that used to be affordable havens. Property insurance in Florida, that can be a total deal breaker. And as more companies call employees back to the office, that freedom to just move anywhere is shrinking.
So, faced with all these growing pains, how are these states reacting? Let's start with Texas, where the state legislature has been working overtime trying to legislate its way through this whole boom.
One of the biggest changes is happening right on the edge of cities. Texas is changing the rules around something called extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ. Basically, new laws are making it easier for landowners to opt out of a city's control, shifting power away from the city and toward property owners in how all that surrounding land gets developed.
The state is also tackling the housing and infrastructure crunch head-on. They've passed new laws to allow for smaller lot sizes and make it easier to approve new residential zoning. Plus, they're pouring $1 billion into a new water fund to make sure the state's infrastructure can actually keep up. It's a clear legislative push to manage the boom, not just react to it.
Managing this level of growth also means you have to prepare for new levels of complexity. Along those lines, Texas also passed the Uvalde Strong Act. It forces these sweeping changes in how different agencies coordinate during major crises, requiring standardized reporting and joint exercises. It's a recognition that a larger population requires a much more robust and integrated emergency response system.
Okay, now let's pivot to Florida, which is battling a completely different kind of storm, one that threatens the very foundation of its real estate market and could stop the boom entirely.
The situation there is, well, it's dire. Homeowners in Florida are paying the highest insurance premiums in the entire country. The costs have gotten so astronomical that they're literally forcing some families to sell their homes and pushing major insurance companies to just stop writing policies in the state altogether.
So in response, there's a new proposal at the federal level, the Natural Disaster Risk Reinsurance Act. The idea is to create a financial safety net. The federal government would basically act as a reinsurer for catastrophic events. This would let private insurance companies lower their own costs and, in theory, pass those savings on down to homeowners.
And the potential impact here is significant. Independent estimates suggest this bill could slash insurance rates by about 25%. For the average family in Florida, that's a saving of around $1,500 in the first year alone. I mean, that is real, tangible relief that could make owning a home affordable again.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway? Well, the simple story of everyone's moving south is pretty much over. We are now entering a much more complex and challenging new chapter for the Sunbelt.
The explosive, almost chaotic growth we saw during the pandemic years is giving way to a new phase. This is no longer a gold rush. It's now a period of managed growth, where these states have to actively grapple with the consequences of their own popularity, from housing to infrastructure to insurance.
And that leaves us with this final, really crucial question. The whole promise of the Sunbelt was a more accessible version of the American dream. But as these popular destinations become more expensive and more legislated, what does that mean for the millions of people still searching for that better, more affordable life? It's a question that is absolutely going to define the next chapter of the Great American Shuffle.